Hey there and welcome back to Rimworld. My name is Pete and today we complete another episode of our Rimworld Anomaly Sea Ice Challenge with the transhumanist Paragons of Pandroth. First of all, apologies for things being a little slower on the channel lately. I had to spend a few days in the hospital for a scheduled procedure and then promptly fell sick afterwards, but today we're back with more adventures from the sea ice. Last time we left off after fending off a pirate breaching raid, perhaps visiting us to reclaim their former member Light, who himself, however, has temporarily left the colony together with young Elpis to establish the small outpost of Xavanazos, a psycasting refuge, if you will, where the two of them will now spend their days meditating at the anima tree, as Light aims to guide Elpis towards becoming a more powerful psycaster. Near the end of the last episode then, we also received this mysterious cargo quest here, and some of you were against it, but I actually like the idea of having the Void reach out to Elpis even on his excursion, so let's accept this one in exchange for the non-violent gene pack, and let's just hope that it's not another golden cube. Well, it is not. Instead, it is another unnatural corpse, one of the very first entities we ever encountered in this series. This time it has taken the form of Elpis, same stats, same traits, same everything really. But if we study it regularly, it should hopefully not become too much of a problem. Back home, meanwhile, we begin another small construction project, one of several in today's episode. I think it's time that we embrace our transhumanist roots a bit more. And for what I have in mind, we will eventually need a slightly increased food production. Over with our psycasters, the gene pack then arrives and Elpis starts studying his doppelganger. The gene pack will of course eventually need to be put inside of a gene bank, but we don't need to worry about that right away. In our common room then, Pandrothian producer Lauren puts her production specialist skills on display, constructing one masterwork and one excellent dread leather couch. All of this is part of a larger overhaul. Clearly our colony has grown somewhat, and one small table is no longer going to suffice, especially not once Elpis and Light return. The two of them, meanwhile, are busy deconstructing the ruins around the anima tree. I've done some digging, and despite what some of the comments said, I could not find any indication that these structures slow down anima grass growth. Nonetheless, it does make the area look a little bit nicer. On the sea ice, Vullek then scans for another underground steel deposit, this one fairly close to the base, perhaps not conveniently so, but certainly closer than the other two in this direction. Speaking of deposits, Maniac has shifted from steel to plasteel deep drilling. As you can see, we still have about 3000 steel in storage, plasteel meanwhile not so much. Lauren's production specialist quality boost is then once again used to make 2 double beds, and while we don't get lucky with the masterwork this time, number 2 here is of excellent quality, and that is good enough for us. Eventually then we are ready for some rearrangements inside of our bedroom area, and just in that moment we are also notified that the anima tree is ready for its very first linking ritual. So let's perform the anima tree linking ceremony right away. Obviously Light will attend to guide Elpis through it, who is now finally going to receive his second rank as psycaster. In the meantime, Ellie rearranges our sleeping quarters. From now on we will have everyone sleep in double beds, partners or not, for a transhumanist colony that is just much more efficient. The reason for that is actually quite simple. We are now going to install sleep accelerators, and these work on a per-bed basis, so if attached to a double bed, then one device will be enough to boost the rest effectiveness of 2 pawns. And keeping the number of accelerators as low as possible is important for 2 reasons. First, the construction of each one requires 5 components, and second, once they're actively accelerating the sleep of a pawn, they consume 400 watts of power. In exchange, we get a 35% boost to rest effectiveness, and our pawns also get a small mood bonus for sleeping with an accelerator. We'll talk more about that in a moment. For now, it's time to select Elpis's first second level psycast. And yes, we're still going with the choice of psycasts mod here. I think especially for someone who's being guided on this journey, this makes some sense. At this point, I was torn between blinding pulse and neural heat dump. Water skip does not really strike me as overly useful on the sea ice. And in the end, I went with neural heat dump. Yes, I know that the ability might be more situationally useful than blinding pulse, but it might come in handy for when we want to spam cast powerful abilities like berserk pulse, for example. even though Elpis is still very far away from being able to learn that. Taking one more look at our new sleeping setup, you can see why I have been so eagerly hunting after masterwork quality, because quality is a multiplier, while the sleep accelerator bonus is a flat addition. For a masterwork level double bed, this now results in a rest effectiveness of 170%. In theory, we could boost this even further with legendary quality royal beds, but those are very expensive to make. This here strikes me as a good sweet spot, and it means that our pawns are now gaining rest, not quite, but almost twice as fast as usual. On top of that, they also receive a small +3 mood bonus, and on the topic of mood, we also desperately need to start going raiding again. Before we do that though, one last note on the sleep accelerators: they also increase a pawn's hunger rate. The increase is just 20%, and our current food supply should be able to cover that. But there is at least one more device that we eventually want to build that also increases it further, not to mention that we might also want to gene modify our pawns a bit more in the future, so it might be wise to have a stable, increased food production a little earlier. Let's put all of that aside for a moment though and finally go raiding. Ellie and Vullek, the couple, take with them our two ghouls Midnight and Jay, as well as enough chem fuel and components for the return trip. We're not packing any steel because where we are going we might find enough, and if we don't, then the carrying capacity of these two pods wouldn't suffice anyway. And where we are going is this silver mining worksite here, protected by 23 people. Yes, that is quite a lot to take on for 4 of our pods, but these folks are tribals, and we probably don't need to defeat too many of them to send them packing. After Randy gave me a quick scare here, we then land on open terrain after all. Our enemies are, as you can see, mostly equipped with melee weapons, but there are a few archers among them. I suspect that the silver will be found in the building right here, while the base might be located in the mountain on the right. Either way, let's create ourselves a nice little choke point here for our assaults. Afterwards, we're then going to send Ellie and Vullek out to attract our enemies, and obviously it does not take them too long to take the bait. Again, despite being heavily outnumbered, I think this should be a fairly manageable fight. Our ghouls are durable and both hit as hard as they can. We have top tier weaponry on both Ellie and Vullek, and our not really all that well protected enemies are neatly trickling in one after another. And there we go, we have finally raided someone and gained another ideology development point, and in doing so we have also just turned a -7 mood penalty into a +6 mood bonus. At this point then, we want to try and hunt down 1 or 2 capable miners. That is a slave rule we still have a good use for. Unfortunately though, incapacitating pawns is easier said than done with a masterwork SMG. Our next target then, this guy right here, a level 12 miner with double passions and the very neurotic trait. Although, as Vullek starts shooting them, we are being raided once more, this time by a very interesting party. I actually don't believe we've seen a raid like this in this series yet. These are cultists who have wandered onto our meditation site and who are planning to set up and perform a skip abduction ritual. As cultists, they are all inhumanized, part of the inhuman meme. 2 of them also have tentacles, a mutation that we ourselves could also gain from the twisted obelisk. Now they will take a moment to set up their ritual, so in the meantime we can watch Vullek slaughter another potential slave. This woman right here then, perhaps another target, but I really don't like the pyromaniac trait, and as a sanguiphage, neither does Vullek. That leaves us therefore with this lady right here, a recluse misandrist. She was downed in the fight earlier and actually also has double passion and the crafting skill, so let's work on stabilizing her for the transport back home while our cultists set up their ritual. Now this will take 4 hours to complete, and there's only 3 of them, although the one performing the ritual will not attack us until they are the last one standing, which gives us ample time to have Light and Elpis take care of things. Over at the silver mine, Ellie already works on the transport back home while Vullek secures our prisoner, while Elpis and Light have managed to successfully lure one lone cultist away from the ritual, which obviously does not end well for them. Our soon-to-be mining slave then gets coagulated to keep them from dying on us, although we should probably not delay too long getting that transport pod built. Otherwise, the hypothermia might take care of things quicker than we want. Elpis and Light, meanwhile, find themselves approached by cultist number 2, another easy target, even though they do come a bit too close for comfort here, even though the beck and psycast here would have ensured that Elpis stays safe. As we then target cultist number 3, their ritual is immediately abandoned, and one last volley then also puts the raid to a full stop. Our 2 ghouls, Midnight and Jay, have in the meantime successfully combed through the enemy base, and it seems like we have found a small heated sleeping room, the perfect spot to store our prisoner until transport is ready. And considering that we are returning with one more person than we brought, we will need a resupply from home anyway. First of all though, let's send Midnight and our future slave back home, together with some loot to smelt and all the silver we have found. The resupply pod then arrives as we are still loading ours, but eventually the goods safely arrive back home, right next to the monolith. Our prisoner is captured, and shortly after we are ready to launch Vullek and Jay. The 2 of them will bring back about 500 units of pemmican, a nice emergency food source, and perhaps something we might want to send over to Light and Elpis. Speaking of the 2 of them, Light has made some progress studying the unnatural corpse. Again, I am not overly concerned about this one. Worst case scenario, we just need to fast skip out of there if things go bad, but for now I'm optimistic that it won't come to that. As Ellie then loads up the last drop pod for herself, our prisoner suffers a very convenient crisis of belief. This should make it a bit easier for us to convert her. With the transport pod then launched, we gain a further 2 ideology development points from raiding a worksite, and just like that, we have now taken care of our raiding duties for the moment. Very fittingly, mere seconds after Ellie returns, Vullek decides to throw a party, and I would agree that our colonists have earned it. With Vullek's convert ability, our prisoner is then quickly turned over to the Paragons of Pandroth, and so we can now work on enslaving her, while Lauren and her trusty Scyther companion Gnome venture back into the pit gate. After all, we still have several avenues down here unexplored, and at least for seeing what's behind the flash mass, these 2 will suffice. For example, we encounter some insects, not what you would expect, but then again hardly surprising considering what all of our toxic waste has already attracted on the surface. Let's not mess with them right now though, instead we can keep going east, fight off one lone finger spike, and eventually destroy a flesh sack containing a turret pack. These were added in the Anomaly expansion 2 and essentially behave the same as the regular mini-turret, only portable and with slightly decreased range. In combat they can be extremely useful, so we might see some utility out of this one here as well. Against 3 bulk freaks meanwhile, we better just run. Further north of the pit entry we also finally find some steel to mine, so we'll send a mulch butler down here once the area has been cleared of enemies, a few of which we are planning to take out right now by sending Nightshade and Vullek down as reinforcements. Together, the 4 should at least be able to deal with the insects. Their hive is currently blocking the path further south. Right behind it, Gnome then uncovers several tri-spikes. Once again, let's keep our distance for now. But with all other avenues seemingly only leading back to the bulb freaks, we eventually engage after all. Alright, there we go. Unfortunately, after doing some checking around, no treasure is hiding anywhere in the vicinity. And so, with Gnome heavily damaged, let's climb back to the surface. To deal with the rest of what's down here, we need a bit more firepower. On the surface then, a psychic soothe puts all of our male colonists into an even better mood, although, despite being a female, Ellie is the first recipient of an inspiration of the trading kind this time. A sizable number of snow hares then appear, but we're not going to bother with hunting them. We have enough food as it is and better things to do. For example, crafting the first of 2 drill arms for our latest acquisition, who will take over deep drilling duties from Maniac, or at least allow us to operate a second deep drill. Speaking of her, Vullek was persuasive enough to enslave her, and with that we add another name from the list of patron supporters in the naming rights tier and above to our ranks, say hello to Karen, named after Karen Murphy. And like I said, Karen will become our mining slave, 2 drill arms, perhaps a few suitable genes if we can find them, and then she'll spend most of her time drilling for resources. Another somewhat curious event then, the appearance of just 12 shamblers. At this point, well over 200 are certainly possible, but of course that's for our sea ice base. The psycasting refuge is obviously much smaller. If possible, we'll attempt to let them pass by and instead pick our next anomaly research project to study. Neurosis Pulse is now available should we need a work speed boost, and let's unlock Blood Rain next. This could be a good way to combat a siege or a manhunt event. Karen then begins her work drilling for plasteel. Her mining skill should hopefully rise quickly, while we wait for both drill arms to be ready. Ideally, we install them simultaneously so that we don't miss out on too much work time from her. Our second hydroponics farm is then slowly taking shape. We need to be a bit careful with temperatures here. If we let all the cold air through into our main farm, then the crops in there could die in a matter of seconds. So we'll build a temporary airlock here, roof over the room, install a heater, and only once temperatures are somewhat comfortable will we break down the wall. Vullek, meanwhile, is on a scanning hot streak. He now finds his second steel deposit of the episode, and literally just a single in-game hour later, his third. So we've got plenty of steel in our future, I think. Components could become an issue though, as Lauren has begun manufacturing the second drill arm and we're down to only 4 at the moment. I have staggered the sleep schedules of Zamal and Shireen though, so that in theory one of them should always be making more. We'll see if that's enough or if we need to hire some extra hands. Zamal at least is out of the equation for now, after suffering a mental break. That's perhaps the downside of the dead calm gene. If mental breaks are no longer violent, then on average they become longer as we get much more of stuff like daze or hide in room. Definitely worth thinking about whether or not that's worth it for production-focused slaves, although we could also just try to acquire a Word of Serenity psycast to fix the problem that way. Now, to even things out, Randy then sends an absolutely fantastic quest over our way. Fighting off 91 man-hunting polar bears should be easy if we just lock our doors. And the first package here is just a dream deal for Elpis. Berserk Pulse and Farskip are perhaps 2 of the best psycasts in the entire game, together with an Eltex shirt and 10 Metal Blood serums. Very hard not to pick that, I think. However, let's do so to start off the next episode, begin that one with a bit of combat. For today, I think we've reached a good point to make the cuts. We do also have some more fan art this week, first from Isaac Young, who shows us the extended family, including Took and Squigs, now proud grandparents of Ellie's and Vullek's daughter Corinna. Also pictured is Roman, who in some ways can probably be considered Corinna's cousin, as well as Elpis, our colony leader. Elpis and Light then take center stage in these 2 pieces by Artie Meander, depicting the meditative serenity of the psycasting grove that our 2 pawns have chosen for Elpis' exodus. I really adore the master and student vibes these 2 drawings give off, and the presence of the anima tree brings back fond memories of that first series in this trilogy, the one with the Cult of Jinx. So thank you to the both of you, and of course, if you have some artwork to submit of your own, feel free to send me an email to pete@petecomplete.com. And with that, let's make the cut for today. As always, I hope you enjoyed the episode, and if you did, then I would be very happy if you could leave a thumbs up. If you like what I'm doing and want to support me and my channel further, then you can of course also go ahead and subscribe to stay up to date, grab some merch over on shop.petecomplete.com, or check out and maybe even pledge to the Pete Complete Patreon. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you next time. Cheers.